The Zion Hill Baptist Church Cemetery is the first organized Black Baptist cemetery in the Nacogdoches County. The site was originally a 2-acre plot donated by Frank and Ellen Walton. The cemetery was used from 1897 to 1945, but in the 1970s it began to be neglected. The city of Nacogdoches assumed custodianship shortly thereafter.
2 years ago in the fall, Dr. Jeff Roth, who's a geographer in the Department of Social and Cultural Analysis, and I, as well as 15 of our students of sociology, anthropology, and geography, decided to see if we could resurrect the history of the African community in Nacogdoches. One of the places we thought that would be a good place to start was with the historical records. And Dr. Roth got a lot of his geography students to go through a lot of historical records to see just how many people should have been buried in the Zion Hill Baptist Cemetery. And what he found was that there was a 2-acre plot that would have had the church, the parsonage, and the cemetery. And at the time in the early 1900s, I think it was, the documents say that the cemetery was absolutely full. And what remains now of the cemetery is this 1/4 acre, 2/3 of an acre plot of cemetery, and there's hardly any headstones that are still standing. So we thought that there might be some unmarked graves, and it would be a good idea to find them and mark them so that the community could remember their dead. With the technique coming out of geology, we decided to see if we could detect what was happening below the ground without actually digging anything in a cemetery. And what we used was a technique called the EM31, which is a long pole that shoots down a signal into the ground to detect the differences in densities. And if you were to hit a grave or a coffin, it's going to have a different density than the earth that's surrounding it. So that'll help detect where the possible graves were. So what we did in this whole area here was we set up a grid that was a 50 by 50 meter grid. And at each meter, we took a measurement to see if we could find differences in soil densities. And we found 2 really interesting things. We found about 25 unmarked graves, but we also found what I think is the difference between metal coffins and wooden coffins, because they show up as highly different densities in the ground. I think that there's 3 metal coffins over in the area that's completely unmarked here, and then there's about 22 other coffins, or other graves anyway, in this area that have been unmarked. So we've done that. We've got the map of where we think all the unmarked graves are. And again, this is only a small area of what probably used to be the entire cemetery.
The Zion Hill community is currently raising funds to place wooden crosses on all the unmarked graves. While there will be no excavation and none of the unmarked graves will be identified, marking the graves will contribute to the history of the Zion Hill congregation and the much neglected chapter of Black history in Nacogdoches.